Welcome back to The Last Safe Space. This is the straight-talking, no-nonsense, data-driven podcast from Music Venue Trust, and we are bringing you the most up-to-date and relevant news from the grassroots music ecosystem, specifically grassroots music venues. I'm back with my co-host today, MBT CEO Mark David. How are you doing today?
I've had a haircut since the last one. How about that?
I know, very nice. Well done.
Thanks.
Is that your big achievement of the week to share?
Fitting a haircut in while we're shouting at everybody is a big achievement in my opinion. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, here we've got the week's roundup in. We've got ministerial changes and what they mean for the grassroots levy. Sam Fender raises a staggering £100,000 for grassroots. Coldplay fans help power the sector. Sonic Boom Festival shows us what independent events can achieve, and we'll dig into crisis cases as usual, including rights management, partnerships, etc. So first of all, we're going to start with our segment about the new minister. So there have been some big changes at government level last weekend. Chris Bryant has moved to Business and Trade. The new Minister for Culture is Ian Murray, formerly Secretary of State for Scotland. We thanked Chris for robust support over the last year and welcome Ian with a briefing across the big topics. Did you want to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, first of all, just to reiterate, Chris has been a huge force for good, especially for music, but really pretty much across culture, which I don't think was much of a surprise for people who know his history and how connected he's been to it for years. But he really has been a very strong advocate for the grassroots, so he deserves all the thanks for that. I don't think... Look, it's a joint partnership between the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee led by Caroline Dinage, and the members of that committee have been very strong on live music and on grassroots music. And what they need is a minister that's listening, which Chris obviously was. I don't think we'll miss the Pink song lyric puns that littered all of his evidence. Yeah,
hey, I'm a Pink fan.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a fan, some of them got when the levee breaks was one that just made me wince. I mean, but that was, look, that's his style and it's distinctive and it gets attention and headlines, but he was very, very strong. So obviously him going was a concern.
Yeah.
But that concern didn't last very long. Secretary of State for Culture, so effectively his boss, almost Lisa Nandy, has also been very strong on these issues. She was in front of the Culture, Media and Sport Select Committee 72 hours after Chris was moved. And the Select Committee asked Lisa to repeat all of Chris's commitments that he had made in the last 6 months to a year. Well, and where are we now? Yeah, nearly a year. Regarding the timeline for the adoption of the levy and the government's approach towards it, and was unequivocal. 50% of tickets for arena and stadium shows should have the levy on 50% by the 31st of December, or the government will start looking at statutory legislation to bring in a statutory levy. So we really still want to avoid that. I think, everybody in our organisation, everybody in the grassroots understands the benefits of it being voluntary and how fast it can happen. But I think the industry still needs to understand we have a government that is prepared to go down the France route of a statutory levy. It won't be £1 a ticket. It will be administered centrally by a government rather than by the music industry. We'll lose control over what it can do. And we don't have to do that. Look, the question of whether there will be a levy is settled. There's going to be a levy.
Yeah.
Will it be £1 on every ticket, voluntary done on a blanket basis by the music industry, or will it be a statutory levy? And Lisa Nandy, the Secretary of State for Culture, is very clear. If it isn't a voluntary levy of at least 50% of all tickets by the 31st of December, conversations about a statutory levy will open.
And do we think that Ian Murray is going to be good for the grassroots sector?
I've read his history. It's actually quite fascinating. I'd recommend everybody reads his history, actually. Look, politics is weird. It often is driven by personalities and how they feel about something. And Ian has promoted shows and talks a lot about how important music is to him in his biography on his website. Obviously, we've sent him a big briefing about all the things there are that could be done. And some of those, look, let's be clear. If the music industry does the voluntary levy, that's not the end of this conversation. That's one thing achieved. We still need to be looking at VAT on tickets. We still need to be looking at alcohol duty for fixed premises as opposed to supermarkets. We need to be looking at business rates. If the music industry can get its shit together, to do what needs to be done on voluntary levy, then the government should get its shit together and do what needs to be done on ridiculous pre-profit taxation that undermines the whole system.
Excellent soundbite. Moving on to the next segment.
Yeah.
So if we're going to talk about the week in crisis, in England, a venue in Sheffield faces a landlord looking to sell the building. Mm-hmm. So that puts their future in real jeopardy. And talking about rights management, we've got a venue in Manchester that wants clarity on whether a music license is required. A Kent venue, after a change in management, is back with licensing issues. And again, in Sheffield, PPL and PRS still haven't corrected invoices from a previous case. So several venues continue to face challenges with tariff DP. So we're meeting individually to support them. Can we just hold a second? Is that okay that I've said that?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Leave that bit in where you ask if it's okay whether I said that. No, I'm heavily in favour of these things being debated publicly. Okay. I don't understand, why does everything have to be conducted in private in the music industry? Look, the reality is that a lot of this is known, but it's never in a podcast. Let's be very open about it. Tariff LP doesn't work. That's the standard tariff for if you're selling tickets. It works brilliantly at all our big events. It's an absolute disaster, frankly, at the grassroots level. It takes money out of the system that shouldn't be going out of it, and everybody knows that. It doesn't get distributed because we don't have enough information to distribute, and everybody knows that. It has reporting structures that can't be complied with, and everybody knows that. This is not news, you know. Tariff DP is slightly different. That's a tariff that's been around for a long time and is now being used more and more for club shows. But it is different from tariff LP or even the tariff for club shows, because the rate is the not so much the rate, which is higher, but the minimum fee is much higher. And what that means is if you're running a club show for a 100 capacity room, your bill has gone up by 400% minimum.
Yeah.
It might have gone up by much more than that, but it's gone up by 400% minimum. Something like that really does require much more discussion. We have a good working relationship with PPL PRS, which is the agency that collects on behalf of PPL and PRS. So that's who collects these things. We like working with them. They've been very helpful on a number of cases, so we should applaud them for that. They know, and we know, and PRS know, there are fundamental problems around some of these tariffs and the way they're designed. And so Gareth, who works for us, is our royalty specialist. Everybody in the grassroots is in favour of songwriters getting paid. They are songwriters. People who run music venues are members of PRS. Mm-hmm. Even they think, look, this needs change. And there's meant to be a review of Tariff LP, which should really already have started, to be honest. Tariff DP needs a review. In that review, let's finally come up with something that actually works for the grassroots, and leave that bit in. Don't edit that out.
Okay.
You know, are we allowed to discuss these things publicly? Well, can anybody tell me why we're not? If the system was working really well, you wouldn't have to ask that question, would you?
No.
Or is it all right to say these things? Yes, it is all right to say these, because these are happening to people who are trying to run live music in their communities, and this is an obstacle to them doing it. And it's not that songwriters shouldn't be paid. Everybody's in favour of that. It's, are we paying the right songwriters? Are we charging these venues correct? Are these songwriters even represented by PRS for music? And there's too much doubt in this system. It's all resolvable. Data is king.
And also, realistically, that is something we've been dealing with this week. So,
yeah, we deal with it every week. You know, honestly, there are close calls around venues that are struggling to survive because of the bills they have from PRS for music, and that's not necessarily PRS for music's fault. They have it becomes their fault if we can't have a reasonable discussion about, and public discussion about, what are these fees? What royalties are due? Who does the money go to? Is that really... all the work we're doing is back to a thing that was a long-standing thing for Music Venue Trust worked on, and we call it the grassroots pound. How much does a pound that you give, the public gives, on the door of a music venue, how long does that pound stay in the system? You know, how long does it support the musicians or the crew or the venue operator or the security staff on the door, or investing in the equipment or investing in the next tour? How long does it stay in the system? And everything we're talking about in all the things we're doing eventually come down to trying to keep that pound supporting grassroots music, supporting grassroots musicians, crew, staff, operators of venues, promoters. Keep the money in the system. Don't let it leak out to other bits. So a grassroots songwriter royalty that keeps the money in the grassroots ecosystem, brilliant. Anything that doesn't do that, let's publicly talk about why it isn't doing it.
Good. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on to slightly more positive things, we're going to say a big thank you to Coldplay because they've just completed a record-breaking 10-night run at Wembley with an extraordinary commitment to the grassroots sector as well through their show. So hundreds of thousands saw the message, and with Wembley and partners, we got new and emerging artists on at the fan zones stage.
Yep.
Thanks to Save Our Scene, Gear for Music, and D&B Auto Technic in Yamaha and the venue team. So yeah, that's another really exciting thing to talk about, really.
Yeah, honestly, I can get quite emotional about some of the work we do, normally around saving a venue or bringing a venue back or, whatever else. But I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you every member of the team that stood in that venue and watched 90,000 people with our logo on the screen saying 10% of tonight's proceeds from the band is going to go and support grassroots music. If you work for a music venue trust and you're not emotionally moved by that, you should probably work for somebody else, because that's what we've been working on since 2018. So to see it at that scale and include in that show, do you know what? I'm going to become a proper Coldplay fan rather than just an occasional dabbler.
He always was a Coldplay fan.
No. But I mean, like, do you know what? Actually, that show is phenomenal.
It's spectacular.
It's spectacular. I mean, what you got to admire about that band is they walked on stage and everything you would normally see at the end of everybody else's show happened in the first,
all the way through.
happened in the first 45 seconds, and then there were bouncing balls that the crowd were playing. There was confetti, there was fireworks, and then the rest of the show started, and it was more than that, But the way that they are connecting with their crowd, I think, is amazing. And the fact that they are deeply rooted in not just Music Venue Trust, they're planting trees, they're carbon neutral, they're investing in communities around the world. I think it's absolutely an astonishing example, frankly, of how the music industry can be a force for good. And this is the leading band in the world doing this, the leading artist in the world doing this, the leading management team and crew and staff doing it. And Wembley Stadium were amazing with us. They were fantastic around the fan zone, and we should say a huge thank you to all the acts that came and played for us and the DJs. And as you said, George and Alex and Posey and Breezy, the team at Save Our Scene were amazing. I'm on a high from it. I went twice. That it was that good.
Yeah, and I would have gone twice. It was
and
great.
It wasn't just to see our logo on the screen. I don't know how big it was, 40 feet high. It was because it's a life-affirming event, and to have the recognition of grassroots music central to that event, absolutely amazing.
I also can't quite articulate it. You said it in the last episode, I think, but there's something about watching that band on a stage that big and still feeling the intimacy that you get in a small venue.
Yeah, I mean, we talked
crazy.
about that particular video, that thing that Chris Martin does, that thing in Australia where he goes out to the crowd. They're doing that all the time, and the way they break down barriers. Look, cards on the table. I don't really like big shows. I like small shows. I've got a job doing that. Did you know that? Like, that's what I'm doing, and that's what everybody in our team's doing. We want to go to the George and the Lexington and see a band so far away that you can feel the spit on you, So, but the way they have done it is a throwback to them at the Dublin Castle, or I put them on in Tunbridge Wells Forum twice or three times, I think. They've managed to do this incredible spectacular in a way that still feels very close and small at times.
Definitely, yeah.
Sometimes it's fire-breathing dragons and people wearing space helmets in
alien suits.
in a part of the show that I genuinely didn't. Muppets, and I mean, listen, it's everything it possibly can be. It's an incredible team behind it as well. I mean, the design is. It's not it isn't just world class. It is the standard of world class stadium events, and within it is absolutely that little kernel of human connection that is the reason why we do this work. So that echo between what we do and how they're doing their thing probably was the bit that was the emotional pull for everybody in the team, I think.
Definitely. They also had this amazing Palestinian singer called Yana, I think her name was, and one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an incredible
and the bringing the people on stage.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody told me that one bit of it was controversial. None of that's controversial. They're trying to treat people as human beings. What's controversial about?
I think they were treating everyone equally.
Absolutely, they were.
That's the whole premise.
That's the whole premise of the whole thing. Put everything else aside and let's all be humans together, enjoy music for an evening. I think it's amazing.
Anyway, thank you so much, Coldplay.
Yes.
We are eternally grateful.
Yeah.
What a show. And also speaking about another incredible artist, Sam Fender, he raised £100,000 from his arena and stadium shows, funding support for 38 grassroots music venues.
This is what can be done. You know, that's
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Like, look, in the grand scheme of the music industry, that's the carryover figure that people lost on a thing they didn't really pay attention to. You know, in our little sector, in the grassroots sector, that's 38 venues, 19 who were improved and 19 who are facing some sort of threat of closure that won't be closing now. If anybody in the music industry, anybody at all watching this wants to argue that £1 on each of Sam Fender's tickets, stopping 19 venues from closing down, keeping open access to 19 communities, access to live music was kept open for £1 on each Sam Fender ticket. And again, huge praise to the management team there, to the agent, to the promoter, to the venues. Everybody was absolutely brilliant. Everybody pulled together. Everybody who did it, from Sam Fender and his band, through that crew, through them out, everybody, they saved the 19 venues. We're a mechanism to get that support out to the venues. It's not that they're the ones who raise the money to do it. They should take all the applause for the 19 venues that haven't closed down because that one artist put £1 on his arena and stadium shows. Okay, if every artist was doing that, no venues would be closing down. All venues would be being improved. Every artist would be having a better experience on the grassroots sector. People will be able to put petrol in the van and go and play more shows. It's so simple. It's amazing we're still having any kind of debate about it. And I should also say, if you're not interested in any of that because you really are a hard-hearted, villainous soul,
Scrooge,
you know, living in the what's that Hunter S. Thompson thing? Oh, the music industry is a shallow plastic trench where thieves and vagabonds run free and good men die like dogs.
Not
and
completely wrong.
And it also, he says, and it also has a negative side. Okay, imagine you're one of the people who are really on the negative side. Okay, what about the PR? Just do that. If you can't think about the reason to do it, that's really, really good. Everybody thinks that is an amazing model. All the newspapers were covering it and saying, this is brilliant. Really, congratulations. Every bit of praise was earned because everybody put the effort in.
Yeah, I mean, the PR just on Sam Fender alone was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will be because on the ground, people are really, really angry and upset that their music venue is closing down, while at the top, we've got people making massive salaries and I don't mind them doing it. But what about if they did it within an industry
in a
where
sustainable way?
In a sustainable way, the venues weren't closing down, and that's what Sam Fender's done. That's what Enter Shikari have been doing. That's what Frank Turner does. That's what Katy Perry's going to be doing. That's what Coldplay did. Last Dinner Party have just announced they're supporting us on this one. Gorillaz have announced they're doing the Levy. My Chemical Romance is doing it. If all these acts can do it and all their teams can understand it, all their promoters can understand it, why can't everybody understand it? Who doesn't want to stop 19 venues closing down with one arena tour?
I don't know, but it's exciting to see
it
happening.
Is. I sound angry about it. I'm not. I'm absolutely elated. I think it's amazing.
So again, thank you so much, Sam Fender, for the incredible work you and your team have put together to make this happen. And so much change is going to happen because of it, so much positive change. We also celebrated Sonic Boom Festival. It's independent, it's affordable, and it's deeply rooted in regenerating its community. And it's a brilliant model for how festivals can lead with purpose. I think they align very well with us, don't they?
They do. And it was the people always coming to us saying, oh, can you sort of support us in a way? And we'd love to support everybody. The particular thing about this one was to realise how valued it was by artists and audiences who absolutely understand that Sonic Boom Festival has really put the effort into do their absolute best they can to represent the best of grassroots. Do you know what I mean? I love stuff like that. There's lots of other, I mean, we're not just picking out one. Radar Festival should be heavily praised. You know, the work they put in. They decided to put a levy on their tickets, even in their hardest year.
I know.
You know,
they're
and
incredible
so that's
team.
incredible team. Again.
A very niche music scene as well. So
Yeah.
they work really hard to build their community.
It's an ecosystem. You know, how many times we've got to say it? Look, grassroots festivals and grassroots venues and promoters and artists, everybody's all in the same, we're all in the same place. We all need just a little bit of help, and we're very happy to support each other.
So we've also got Hideous Mink Records, who dropped a Hideous Collective, that 24-track double compilation raising money for MVT and the UK Artist Touring Fund. Artists from Big Special to Hot Wax shouted at their favourite grassroots venues, you know, for the last couple of weeks. And then also Arts Council also reopened applications for Grassroots Music Fund. And if you run a venue, now's your time, basically. It's about sustainability, developing talent.
This is very niche, but everybody who's ever done it, be prepared to raise your arms in the air and just clink your glasses together. You don't have to apply through Grantium.
I mean, I've done it, and it was really hard. So this is great news.
I mean, people at the Arts Council know Grantium has been a real major obstacle for people trying to make applications. That was the application platform. You can now submit using a simple Word document if you're applying from the grassroots, the Supporting Grassroots Fund. You don't have to go through Grantium. That means, and I'll look directly at the camera, there has never been a better time to make an application to Arts Council if you're in the grassroots sector than there is now. I can honestly tell you that everybody else that we speak to who is looking to apply for public funding is desperate to have their stuff taken out of Grantium and move over to a Word doc. So, you know, it's a good opportunity.
It's a game changer, isn't it?
Yeah, really. I don't know how long it'll last. I mean, we're not particularly clear on that. I hope it might evolve into a new way of making applications. But look, it's a really good opportunity. And if you're watching this and you're a venue, you really should take that opportunity, because it could go back to Grantium. And it's not impossible to do application. We've got loads of venues that have been successful, but it is much, much harder than it currently is. So take advantage now.
Brilliant. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on your Substack, The Space Between, where you're talking about nearly 24 million arena and stadium tickets went on sale, and just under 2 million carried a grassroots contribution, which is 8%.
Yeah, that's for 2025.
Yeah.
You look, 2026 does look better. I think we're above 25% at the moment, or certainly hovering around 25%, or maybe even slightly higher. And actually, in this third quarter of the year, it's been a lot higher. It's above a third of tickets that have gone on sale. But the government target is 50% of tickets by 31st of December. And I personally feel that even 45% probably won't be enough to avoid a conversation about statutory levy. So I think everybody needs to
get on it.
Step up now. Yeah. Get on it. And look, that conversation echoes all the way back through that last thing we've just talked about. Why wouldn't you want to do this? It doesn't make any difference to your bottom line. It's plainly working and effective. I mean, let's set a bus up and get everybody in the music industry that's got any doubt about doing this, and I'll take them on a tour around the 19 venues that would be closed if Sam Fender hadn't have done, and his team hadn't have done what they've done. And then after they've been around those 19 venues, they can tell us whether they can be bothered to get it.
Make them drink a pint every single one, and then get them to get their wallets out at the end.
What's at the end? Listen, I write a Substack every week and comes out every week, and they're not always factual or whatever. Sometimes they're just things about. I'm writing one about the George in Whitechapel at the moment because it's their 21st anniversary, but the specific thing I was talking about in that Substack is, why isn't it happening on every show? And the answer isn't because people are against it. The answer isn't that somebody's being awkward or whatever. It's genuinely what I would say is like an accidental silence, which is that a show gets planned, everything gets costed, all the details get agreed, and then right towards the end of it, nobody has asked the question about the levy, and it isn't officially anybody in the system of how shows go on sale. It isn't anybody's official job to ask that question. I think probably we should make it somebody's job. Maybe the ticketing companies, when it's just about to go on sale, maybe somebody at the ticketing companies could just phone the people that are working with and say, can I just check why there isn't a levy on this show?
That would be great.
And
So
maybe
good.
there is a reason. I'm not saying there can't ever be a reason. You know, we've been very clear about that. But there are too many shows going on sale. And the specific point I made in that podcast is, I'm not going to out somebody. I don't need to do that. But you and me know there are 4 or 5 arena shows on sale where it is incredibly obvious to us, from what we know about artists, including people we personally know, that there's absolutely no way that had that artist ever been asked the question, do you want a levy on this show, that the answer wouldn't have been yes.
Well, that's it, isn't it? The role of artists is to keep asking the question.
Yeah, they can't do it because it's promoters' costs, but the promoter can do it. The venue can try and insist on it. The agent can say, I really want it to happen. Everybody can just be willing for it to happen. But if nobody feels it's their job to ask, that's where the space between opens up. You know, that it just doesn't happen. And then you see some of them. I mean, I've seen comments on social media aimed at artists who I know are not responsible for it, but aimed at artists saying, oh, I thought you really supported the grassroots. Well, they do really support the grassroots, but unfortunately, this has just fallen by the wayside.
Okay, so let's just wrap up with some quick wins. Show up early, support the Support Act, buy something at the bar, post about it afterwards. These all really help grassroots music venues. And in terms of how you can support our work, we've got the Supporters Circle, where you can contribute, £5-10 a month, what you'd spend on a couple of beers or a coffee to support our work behind the scenes. Supporting
I've
grassroots.
met some of them.
You've met some of them?
Yeah. I saw one in the wild. I saw one in the wild out earlier on, which I mentioned in an earlier podcast. But we had our International Festival Forum showcase the other week, and there were about 4 or 5 of them there, all proudly wearing their exclusive T-shirts. And the conversation was a bit bizarre because they came rushing over to thank me, and I wanted to thank them, and we just spent about 5 minutes
thanking each other.
So that was quite a nice thing. But that's the Support Act one is a really interesting one. We should get people comment below with who is the biggest act you ever saw supporting everybody else, and I bet that I have got the 2 biggest ones there are. I've seen 2 of the biggest acts in the world as support acts.
Are you going to share them?
No. I'll do it in a future podcast.
So maybe I'll share it in the comments. You can also pick up merch as well to support us. We have our own merch store. And thank you so much for listening in again. You can like, subscribe, share. Just remember to keep supporting your local music scene, and let's keep the lights on.